Adam, welcome back to Mea Culpa. Great to see you. Saw you in the green room over there at, what was it, CNN, right? Just the other day. So much to talk about. We had so much to talk about then, even more now. So we're going to jump right into it. Now, look.
Thanks for having me on.
Sure. Despite years of public demand, the Epstein files remain tightly sealed. Now, of course, you're a Gen Z guy. So this conversation is in line with your group, Gen Z, as well as, of course, your journalistic moves these days. I really want to understand the perspective of the younger generation, which, by the way, is the largest voting bloc in America. So again, despite all of the years for the public demand, for the outcry by the GOP, the Republican Party, these Epstein files, they remain tightly sealed. What does this continued stonewalling reveal about who really pulls the strings behind the scenes and why?
Yeah, so when it comes to Gen Z, if you look at the polling, no single generation will have the Epstein list on the top 3 of their issues, but people can care about more than one thing at one time. So we care about housing, the cost of living, the cost of food and groceries, but on our list can also be the Epstein list, you know? Like we can also care about transparency and accountability within the government. So I always see this talking point, like if you look at the polling, people don't actually care about Epstein, but they do. It's part of a broader conversation about transparency and accountability. And if you look at polls of young people my age, a lot of young people are already disillusioned with the current institutions or the establishment. A lot of people feel like the institutions haven't worked for them or they're saddled with student debt. So when Trump got in, people thought he was going to be a change agent. He was going to come in and shake everything up, expose the deep state and drain the swamp. And I think a lot of Gen Zers who maybe had some hope are now realizing he is the swamp. He's worse than the swamp. He'll use the government for his own corruption 10 times more than any other swamp in the past. And the Epstein files has been a really good manifestation of that. We've seen, like, the main reason why this has been so incredibly harmful for the administration is obviously because of Pam Bondi's own words back on Fox News in February, where she said, essentially, the list is on my desk right now. Those words really screwed over the admin. They're now getting hoisted by their own petard because they laid this groundwork of conspiratorial thinking and then they rug pulled their conspiratorial fan base. So I don't think this is going to cause a huge MAGA awakening, but I do think it'll create slightly less dogmatic supporters in the long run, which is what you want. You want at least a small fraction of MAGA to be peeled off and be less dogmatic and think, maybe this administration does cover up some things. Maybe they do lie about some things. So overall, Gen Z is already prone to being skeptical, and I think this is going to increase the skepticism for everybody.
Well, actually, there's 2 parts to that. One, she didn't just talk about it. She and a group of her MAGA moron infiltrators there held up 3 ring loose leafs, right, which appeared to have several hundred pages inside of them, claiming that these are the documents we're going through. Wait till you see what they have to say. So it wasn't just them saying it. They actually physically showed something. Now, we, of course, don't know what was contained in those binders. For all you know, it was blank pieces of paper. We've seen that several times before.
Scribbles, just scribbles, like Donald Trump drew something.
Exactly. I mean, we've seen that before. But, this is where I'm sort of interested in understanding the Gen Z perspective, on this. Nobody likes to be lied to. And that's exactly what's going on right now. On top of that, remember that most campaigns are won and lost by less than a 2% differential in terms of the margin. From what it appears to me, and something that the Trump team did very, very well, they peeled off about 3%. And so that's how they ended up winning the election in 2025. You think that they're losing that 3% and more just in the MAGA base alone?
Between the MAGA base and moderates, absolutely. And I want to build on what you said. No one likes being lied to. That is very true. And a lot of Trump supporters would say, well, every politician lies. Every politician lies to some extent. But Trump made a lot of uniquely insane campaign promises that are almost impossible to make, like to make work now. So it's not just that he lied about, a healthcare bill that is still in the works and, we're almost there giving everyone health. No. He lied about everything, about the ability to end the war in Ukraine. He lied about that. He lied about no new wars. We've seen others spark. He lied about releasing the Epstein files. It seems like a lot of the promises he made are entirely incongruent with what he's able to do. And we had this conversation. He is taking a lot of wins, but for himself.
A lot of wins, by the
for
way.
Himself, but you have to caveat for himself. When he's taking these wins, he's not taking them for the American people or for the Republican Party. He's kind of just winning in a self beneficial way.
Well, let me ask you this, because there are many promises that he made, and I'm 100% in agreement with you, Adam. There are countless promises that he had made during the campaign that he's managed to be successful on. Mm-hmm. For example, immigration.
Yep.
He has sealed up the border. He has made it so uncomfortable for anybody thinking that they're either going to overstay their visas or try to come through the southern border that we're actually at an all-time low. So he accomplished that. Now, let me say, while he accomplished that, the manner to which he's doing it in is both un-American and grotesque. He's also, gone ahead and passed his big, beautiful bill. Now, again, I don't see it as a big, beautiful bill. I see it as a really ugly piece of shit bill, to be honest with you. I don't like much of what it contains, but he has significant wins, including in the court. That's the part that scares me, that they're going to be able to use these successes, at least successes promoted by the GOP and all of the talking heads, in order to convince younger people that he is still exactly what they want. You may not like how he does it, but he accomplishes the task.
Where I would push back is he's taken these quote unquote wins, but at what cost? So when he does this mass deportation strategy, and that makes the farthest right, the farthest 30% right of his fan base happy, and they're now happy with these insane mass deportations, the cost is alienating that 3% we were talking about, maybe in the middle, or maybe people who didn't quite expect it to be this incredibly reckless. When he's taking these wins in the court, I would still argue these aren't wins for the American people. These are wins to expand his own executive power. So when he takes a win and the Supreme Court says you can do this or you can do that, that's not helping like people in Tennessee or people in Texas who voted for him. That's expanding his own executive power. The same thing with the big ugly bill. Yes, that is a win, but at what cost? It's a win to like the billionaires in this country. I think like Trump, Vladimir Putin, Epstein, and billionaires are winning. Though that's who's winning right now. I'm not sure the American people are that much. Maybe there are some temporary wins with no tax on tips. That does provide some relief. But yeah, the question just becomes at what cost and who is winning exactly? When we were having this debate in the green room, I remember the caveat I kept trying to say is like, okay, he's winning, but for himself, mainly for himself.
Well,
Can you agree with that?
Sure. Yeah. Especially what do you do when it's your constituents, it's your red hat wearing MAGA base that's now being cut off from SNAPs, from food assistance, or from various other programs, including from the Department of Education. When you have a child who needs additional educational assistance, that is not a Republican issue. It's not a Democratic issue. It's an American issue, right? There are children on both sides of the aisle who require additional educational help. Well, what happens when that's no longer there because they just got rid of like 2,500 or 3,000 of these special education teachers? Why? Because DOJ said to cut it. These sort of actions, in my opinion, are going to be the things that ultimately change, hopefully, the 2026 midterms.
Yeah, people need to connect the dots in their minds, like how I vote and the actual on the ground consequences. They need to know that if I vote in one way, there will be this consequence. Now, the slippery thing the administration did, I'm sure you're aware of, is they're trying to remove that direct link of the consequences by making sure the cuts to Medicaid don't actually come into effect until after the midterms. And
So
then the no tax on
2027, yeah.
tips, the no tax on tips ends basically right as Trump's term ends. So those dots that are going to be connected are kind of being warped by the admin, which that's a win, I guess, not for the American people, but that's a win for the administration.
I totally agree with you. Now, let me ask you this, though. With key figures who are still shielded and just many, many questions obviously still unanswered, you believe that the Epstein case exposes a systemic immunity for the powerful? And if so, how entrenched do you think that immunity actually is?
A systemic immunity for the powerful. I am vacillating back and forth sometimes on how deep I think the Epstein list goes. Here's the position I took to my audience. I think that as a collective society, we have way overhyped what exists in the Epstein files. I have people in my comment section who get mad when I say that I don't think.
Me too.
I'm like, listen, Matt Damon is probably not, like, Tom Hanks and Matt Damon are probably just normal guys. I don't think they have anything to do with this. And my comments are like, you don't think that Matt Damon, and I'm like, okay, listen, I know that Jeffrey Epstein, very likely Prince Andrews, and a few other very, very powerful people allegedly were involved in this, but I don't think it is a deep list of powerful people being covered up. I do think Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and a few other people were sick and perverted and had over 300 girls come through their place. When I read the indictment from 2002 to 2005, those are the peak years, the indictment in New York, the Southern District of New York, basically just says they created this network where Epstein would find young girls, have those young girls pay other young girls, and that seems to be the extent of it. Honestly, we've all kind of accepted that there was this island, and this island had a factory in it of all these, like, no, it honestly seems a lot more boring than that. So to go back to your question, rich people definitely are able to cover things up and consolidate power and get away with things that other people wouldn't be able to. But I think Elon Musk is a really good example of that. With the Epstein stuff, I think it is a small group of people. I think that Trump's name is littered throughout the list. We don't know in what capacity, but it's probably littered throughout the list and the flight logs and everything. And I don't think that I don't know if it's a cabal of rich people being covered up.
So it's funny you say that, because I get an enormous amount of shit from my Substack follows when I go on various different shows, or even when I was on MSNBC, CNN, like 10 times over the course of the last 2 weeks. I turn around and I said, I don't believe that Trump is involved in the illicit behavior. And then people are like, what, are you fucking crazy? Right? This is a guy who has actually hit on your daughter. This is a guy who actually, makes claims that he was able to go backstage at, Miss USA, Miss Universe pageants and, see the women changing. And so this is a guy who was accused and found guilty of sexual assault. I'm referring to E. Jean Carroll, and so on and so on. How could you make that claim? I'm just making the claim off of the Donald Trump who I knew for a decade and a half. I don't think that the documents in this file are going to be as, let's just say, grotesque as the American public, including his own MAGA base, believe. So my question, then why hide it? Like something I write about in my Substack all the time. What's the point to hide it? Unless you're implicated in something, fucking release it. Unredacted, except for the names of the victims, which have to be protected.
I would like to caveat, we could talk more about Trump's involvement, but I just don't think, I reject the idea that it was this large cabal of celebrities like Tom Hanks or whatever. I think that's when it goes a little bit too far. I think there's a valid argument to be made that a lot of Trump's behavior is incredibly suspicious for a lot of the reasons you just listed. But if I had to guess why they're covering it up, it seems to have been answered sort of yesterday. Back in May, the FBI sat down with Trump and said, your name is sort of littered throughout these files in different capacities.
Well, I don't know if they used the word littered. They said that it appears several times in the file.
Littered was my word, but it appears several times in the file. We can change that. And then Elon Musk directly says Trump's name is in the files. That's why they won't release it. Then they refuse to release it. But I don't know. You said it's not the Donald Trump you've known for 10 years, but you just listed a lot of things about a pretty despicable person that you knew. So like he walked into dressing rooms after buying multiple beauty pageants and then bragged about that on Howard Stern. He said that he can grab women because they let you do it. Didn't he host a behind the scenes party in 93 with just him and Epstein? I mean, maybe he didn't openly like display these things around you, but there's some weird ass stuff he did with Jeffrey Epstein.
I totally agree with you. Weird it is. And if taken at its word, is even worse. I've gone backstage with Trump remember, I only started full time in 2007, and much of the stuff that is reflective in this file certainly precedes my time with him. But I've gone backstage with him at Miss Universe, Miss USA, even the Miss Teen USA pageant. I was one of 3 people on the board of directors for the Miss Universe organization. I never saw anybody without their clothes on. I never saw anybody in their underwear. I never even saw anybody actually in anything maybe other than their bikini.
Trump did. Trump said he did.
He said he did. Was he just trying to be impressive to Howard Stern?
That's even worse. What's impressive about that? That's even worse.
Well, he was trying to impress him or something. Say, "Oh my God," because Howard would do the, "Oh my God, you got to see these beautiful women with their gorgeous bodies," just to sort of play to the audience. Trump does that a lot. Now, I'm not going to argue about the E. Jean Carroll case. That case exists. I'm certainly not going to defend comments that I've heard him make and so on. But comments is not criminality. That's the only point I'm trying to make, is that I hate this concept of conspiracy theories, because to a conspiracy theorist, they are never satisfied. It's always something. Oh, well, if that's not true, then what about this? All right. And what if he did that? You can never argue with a conspiracy theorist, because as you're proving them wrong, they're coming up with another conspiracy to conflate the first one. That's the issue that I have. I believe, as a lawyer, somebody who lived their life dealing with facts and real evidence, there exists, and I don't want my listeners to get me wrong on this, there exists a real file, all right? A real file that was accumulated by law enforcement over like many years, 6-7 years, starting with what took place down in Florida with Epstein's case, all the way through to the Southern District, as you said. There's real documents by law enforcement. Release the file. Let us take a look at the facts, not facts put forth by you, not facts put forth by me, certainly not facts put forth by Donald Trump, Caroline Leavitt, Tulsi Gabbard, or MAGA Mike Johnson, or anybody. Put the facts put out by and accumulated by law enforcement. That way, we don't have to speculate anymore. No more opinion, just facts.
Yeah, I agree. I guess the only part that I would try to, would you agree with this sentence? Because a lot of the pushback you give seems to be around the word criminality. You say, I don't think there's any criminality involved. What if I say, we have no current evidence of criminality, but with the totality of behavior Trump has displayed with Epstein, we should look more into it. There should be more.
We don't even have to look into it. It's already there in the file, is all that I'm trying to say. And you know what? Suspicion or belief is not something that you would take to court if you were a prosecutor. You need the facts. And that's how you end up. Look, E. Jean Carroll, as an example, brought the facts. It wasn't born just based off of her testimony, hearsay, right? It was born by facts. The same thing done by both Tish James and Alvin Bragg and others. The same thing that was brought against Jeffrey Epstein when he was being charged in the indictment. The same that was brought against Ghislaine Maxwell that ultimately led to a 20-year sentence. Facts matter, all right? Opinions, it's great. It's great. to the person and the group of people that ascribe to that. That's my only opinion.
Well, I guess this leads us back to your question a few minutes ago. Why won't the admin release the facts after
Right.
promising they would? That's the main question. And it only leads any reasonable person to be like, the guy who was best friends with Epstein won't release the Epstein list after saying he would, after Elon Musk said this. So I get why people are jumping to this conclusion, but there have been times when I've had to reel back my audience, like you said. Like, a lot of people in my audience do take it way too far. And I'm like, listen, absolutely, it's all despicable and we need to do more research. But like, there was just one argument I had about Tom Hanks. It's still in the back of my head. I don't know why. I'm not a big Tom Hanks defender, but I'm just like, listen.
Right. I hear you on that. Meanwhile, the one thing that I respect the most about Gen Z is your openness, because there's obviously very, very different between your generation and, I'm not even going to say mine, where better than, for example, my parents' generation when dealing with issues like the LGBTQ plus community and so on. The LGBTQ plus festival was canceled based upon a Trump DEI order. Imagine that. I mean, and it's been going on for many, many years now. Their new DEI crackdown has led to the cancellation of this major festival. Is this merely culture war theater or a calculated effort to erase marginalized voices from the public square? And how is Gen Z looking at it?
I think it's both at the same time. I think they use the culture war theater as a means to end up erasing some of the stuff from culture. And Gen Z is very, very progressive. Like, we want equality. I mean, some of us are progressive to a fault and are a little bit too like purity testy. I'm trying to push back on that wing. But I think that we understand that people in power for decades have been punching down on certain minority groups. We've grown up in our most formative years watching Donald Trump and other Republicans sort of punch down on minority groups when trans Americans and gay Americans just want to live their lives. Just let people be happy. Like, we should be about maximizing well-being in America. And if that means somebody marries their partner and they're both men, who cares? Literally, who cares? I just think that Republicans are now using this as a culture war issue, and it's working. It's working. The problem is we have activists on the far, far left side of the party who say these insane things and don't even vote for Democrats. And then Republicans try to paint those activists as representing the entire party, when a lot of the times these activists don't even vote for us in the first place. So what we need to do is bring things back to where we all stand, which is we just want equality. We want freedom. We need to make sure we're setting a line between us and the people who are pushing this crazy activist stuff. And then we try to fight against authoritarianism. I'm not trying to place most of the onus on people who are like on the far side. I'm just trying to say that there's a message we can push that Sarah McBride is pushing, Representative Sarah McBride, the first and only transgender congresswoman, where she says we can talk about these things in a very, very relatable way and win people over. And at a time when Republicans are directly attacking the rights of trans and gay people, I think we need to be the counterforce. So Gen Z sees it. Gen Z sees that Republicans are kind of really regressive in the way that they speak and talk. I mean, a lot of Gen Zers care about Israel and Palestine, right? That's like one of the big issues. So there was this whole movement, don't vote for Harris, abandon Harris. They thought that Trump and Kamala were going to be roughly the same on it. Then Trump gets into office and has this idea to push 2 million people out of Palestine, which, listen, like, no matter what you believe, this idea seems to go like one step too far. And now Gen Zers
you mean to take their land and to build houses because it's on the water, right? I mean, you know, to me, it's crazy. I mean,
it's despicable. Listen, and I'm somebody who, like, right after October 7th, I was like, yeah, of course Israel can respond. Of course, after this terrorist attack, of course Israel has the right to respond and the right to exist and protect themselves. But it gets to a point where you're like, okay, what the hell? Donald Trump needs to stop egging this on. And just to bring it back, I think Gen Zers had sort of a wrong assumption that Trump and Kamala were the same. And now we're realizing, holy shit, Donald Trump is attacking vulnerable groups, domestic and abroad.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm with you. And by the way, being Jewish and pro-Israel, I still think what's going on over there, you know, is absolutely, yes, we should absolutely annihilate Hamas. But somewhere along the line, I think people are forgetting that Palestinians and Hamas are not the same thing. Not all Palestinians are Hamas, right? I mean, all Hamas are, I should say, are taking over Gaza and Palestine, but there's still innocent people there. And some of these young kids and the damage and the death that's going on there, I have a real problem with it. But I want to ask you this then, because what long-term damage do you think that these aggressive policy moves influence or inflict, I should say, on social cohesion and America's fragile commitment to DEI, to diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Yeah, I think social cohesion is really important. And the US, one of our strengths is that we're a melting pot of a bunch of different cultures, and that makes us so incredibly strong. A lot of people say that America is uniquely racist in our structures and our institutions, and we are. We do have a history of racism and oppressing Black people, even recent history, like redlining back in the 60s. So I don't want to downplay that. But while we do have a racist history, there's also a beauty in the amount of diversity we have. Like after Zohran Mamdani won in New York, however, whatever you think of him, Charlie Kirk sent out this tweet. Charlie Kirk said, wow, 20 years ago, a Muslim blew up the World Trade Center, and now New York just elected one. Despicable.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's actually kind of beautiful. Like New York City is inclusive enough to now elect people who maybe despite whatever religion they are. So the point is, America is a melting pot of different cultures and religions, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. I don't even know. Everyone has different frameworks of what that means. But in the scientific sense, it's a good thing to have a more diverse and equitable workplace 10 out of 10 times. Are there times where it perhaps went too far? Sure, but you can find that in any single case of any single policy ever. There's going to be people who abuse any policy, whether it's Medicaid or everything will be abused to some extent. But overall, we want to create a society where cultures and religions can mesh to create something that's good. And honestly, I think that Russia and China and Iran have every incentive to weaken our social cohesion. So when we see these people online, on Twitter, spreading extreme Islamophobia or anti-Semitism, extreme misogyny or homophobia, all of these things weaken the cohesion of a society. So we have bad actors, foreign actors, trying to weaken our cohesion. But as I say that, I'm thinking not just foreign actors. We have domestic actors in the White House who are spreading this hate and trying to weaken the social cohesion. So right when the US public, right when we were all on the same issue, the same page of an issue for the first time with the Epstein list, I think both sides are like, release the list. We're united for the first time in a decade. Trump wants to pivot back to the most divisive issue possible. He's like, let's not talk about the Epstein list. That's too unifying. Let's pivot over to Obama. In fact, let's make up lies about Obama stealing the election. So Trump, in a top-down way, is trying to weaken social cohesion by spreading lies, talking about divisive issues, covering things up.
Well, good, because I'm going to bring that up in about a half a second. Me personally, being a New Yorker, a lifelong New Yorker, I don't care to what God Mamdani prays to. It means absolutely nothing to me. Where I don't like him is I don't like his policies. I don't think he understands New York City. I don't think he understands the real estate world. I don't think that he's the right guy in order to deal with New York City's significant issues that are taking place right now. Not all of his policies do I oppose, but the ones that he actually ran, with all due respect to the young generation. Sure, everybody wants something for free. I get it. Look at how much abuse took place during Trump's first administration with COVID relief, right? All of these folks with getting money, they thought that Uncle Sam was just handing out money like it didn't mean anything. Half that shit should come back. And I believe that this administration should actually put together a task force to bring back like the $3 trillion that we spent, $3 trillion in COVID relief. People took advantage, including his own son-in-law, who I think got COVID relief to the tune of over $20 million. Give me a fucking break. Now, since that's out of the way, I do want to talk about Obama and Comey and all of this, because Trump has made repeated claims that Obama, Comey, and others committed treason. I mean, that's a hell of a word, right? And to my listeners, please just understand the reason they use treason is because the ultimate penalty for treason in America, by the way, is death. All right. There is no other. It's death. And they bring this up in regard to the Russia investigation. These are, in my opinion, and I hope everybody else's as well, these are pretty explosive accusations. What do you think's the legal and the factual basis for these claims? But more importantly, where do you think that they fall apart?
I'll talk about the Obama claims in 1 second, just to visit back on Zoran, because I have an interesting thought here. I think that I think he understands a lot of the problems that New Yorkers are facing, like how they, like where they're lacking in security. But a lot of Zoran's prescriptions kind of miss the mark, or at least not the prescriptions, not the policies, but the funding mechanisms for those prescriptions. So where my mind was really blown is after I interviewed Zoran, I think I like him. I think he's very charismatic, very friendly. My dad is Muslim, and my dad's side of the family came from Syria. So I had a great conversation with Zoran about Islam and everything. And where I think it falls apart for Zoran is how he wants to fund these things. His entire platform is ran on the idea that he's going to raise New York state taxes and use that raise in taxes to fund things. But he's running for the mayor.
You mean like free food, free grocery stores, free transportation, ask or demand that the real estate owners, say, for example, of multifamily properties should end up footing the bill in order to make sure that young people or anybody, any New Yorker, has the ability to live in New York at a certain price point. Here's the problem with that. Let me just tell you, I was in the business for years. I mean, for years. One, every single year your real estate tax goes up. Every single year. By the way, you know what doesn't go up? The rent. You know what else went up? Water, sewer, electric, insurance, the cost of repairs. None of this goes up. So at some point in time, if you own an asset and that's your business, you too want to have profit left over at the end of the year so that you can live, right? Instead, what you'll end up with is a loss on your property because, again, tell me that you're going to do away with real estate tax. Okay. And you're going to ensure that the state has state-run insurance so that you don't get robbed by the various different insurance companies that are out there to protect the asset in case somebody slips and falls or, a fire, whatever. How do you do this when your costs, your expenses keep rising? And then Zoran comes in and says, no, we're going to pull everything back and we're going to make everything like rent stabilized or rent controlled pricing. It's like $1,000 per unit. What do you do?
That's not the rent freeze is a bad idea. And, I'm okay with if you want to work towards subsidized healthcare and subsidized food, that's different. But my main problem is that he's running on raising the state taxes of New York, but he's running for the mayor of New York City. Right. You can't raise the state taxes when you're running for the mayor. So there is an incongruence in how he wants to fund things, but that never stopped Trump from lying about policies, I guess. So that was my main thing with Zoran. Here was just to recap, he's a great candidate, great at politics, very charismatic, but the funding mechanisms for how he wants to do these things are completely off. How are you going to raise state taxes as the mayor? But let's talk about Obama really quickly. It sucks that we're even having this conversation, but I guess let's just start with the fundamental fact that I think Trump is doing this very clearly to distract from Epstein. It's really obvious. He's trying to throw red meat to the base and divide America at a time when we kind of were united on the Epstein list coming out. But the entire basis of his argument is terrible. If you read the original report, the IC report back in 2016 from the intelligence community, it said that Russia was trying to influence our elections in any way possible, but they just weren't technologically advanced to change a single vote. So they used social media bots. They tried to attack the election infrastructure, but weren't really advanced enough to. They tried to spread extreme skepticism and Islamophobia, homophobia, all of these things that I was talking about. They tried to divide the American people and get Trump to win. And this was confirmed by Obama, the intelligence community under Obama. Marco Rubio in 2020 even did another Senate intelligence report. So all of this was confirmed. Yet Tulsi Gabbard is now coming out and saying, see, there wasn't a single vote changed. We told you there wasn't a single vote changed, which is actually what the original report said. So they're just
Right.
agreeing with the original report, but misrepresenting what it says.
But I'm not so sure that's the basis of Tulsi Gabbard's claim. And I say this as somebody who themselves was personally affected by this investigation. I want to give you my take on the whole thing. And I believe that what Trump is excellent, what his superpower is he could take something that has a monicum of truth to it and make it into the entire island, right? It's like basically having a cup of water and making that cup of water into the ocean.
Yep.
The Steele dossier was flawed. It was determined to be bullshit, to say the least. But somehow or another, that Steele dossier, which initially started out as opposition research hired by the Clinton campaign against Donald Trump, she looked at the report from all of my investigation, and I've done a lot. I have a New York Times bestselling book on it called Revenge. She looked at it and she goes, this is bullshit, and I'm not paying for it. Somehow or another, that Steele dossier ends up in the hands of John McCain, of Jim Comey. An investigation gets opened up into something, again, that was flawed opposition research. And the question becomes, why? Why was an investigation opened up as against Trump and others based off of a document that they acknowledged was unverified and unreliable and provided by unreliable sources as well? His argument is that this is like a political poison pill that, in his estimation, corrupted national security, corrupted our government, and was used within which to go after him.
I think that I don't know exactly why the original investigation was open, but wasn't it fruitful? Didn't they end up finding some sort of, with Paul Manafort, weren't there ties?
There were ties, but that had nothing to do with the Steele dossier. You know,
I agree that the Steele dossier was a crazy overreach. I've revisited a lot of this and I reread the Steele dossier. It obviously contained a lot of things that were pure speculation and even just beyond speculation. But I'll have to look more into that if the Steele dossier was the original reason the investigation opened.
Well, I mean, that was the big thing. That's where the whole Russia scenario came from, where the congressional hearings emanated from. How do I know this? Because I was the center of it. In fact, if you go into the Steele dossier, I am named in that dossier more than anybody else. There are 11 allegations made against me, none of which are true, none of which even have the semblance of truth to it. That I went to Prague. I wasn't in Prague. I was in Los Angeles at the time with my son. They said, well, prove it. Well, go ask the baseball coach for USC. Well, maybe we got the day. Where were you the day after? I was with Harvey Levin on set at TMZ. You can't make this stuff up, right? I don't own a dacha in Sochi next door to Putin. My father-in-law is not a friend of best friends with Putin since childhood. My father-in-law is like 20 years older than Putin and has never been to Sochi or to Russia and doesn't know Vladimir Putin. In fact, he's not Russian, he's Ukrainian. I mean, the whole thing is just pure and total bullshit. But what they did is they started open up all of these investigations into Trump and his relationship to Russia.
Sorry to cut you off. I don't mean to cut you off, but I found a website. It says the Steele dossier was not the original basis. what predated that, while that was used, the Inspector General's report confirmed that the inquiry only started after Australian officials alerted U.S. authorities that George Papadopoulos, a Trump campaign advisor, had advanced knowledge of Russia's possession of damaging information about Hillary Clinton. The Steele dossier was then later used to compile memos or use memos from Christopher Steele. It was used in the investigation to justify more surveillance applications. So they use it to surveil Trump more. But is it true that the George Papadopoulos thing predated the Steele dossier?
I don't think so. I think that's completely inaccurate. I believe Papadopoulos was post that. He was part of the campaign. This started, the Steele dossier started, I believe, way before that. Again, it was opposition research that was being used or supposed to be used by the Clinton campaign in their fight, in their campaign against Trump and so on. That's just the point. So, like I said, there is a monicum of truth to what he's saying, but what he does is he explodes it to the nth degree. And again, it would be sort of like saying that one piece of sand is the entire beach, or maybe in this specific case, a pound of sand is the entire beach.
I guess, you were involved in this straight up. So I'm being careful on where I push back because you obviously, all the facts and everything. But I just have the feeling that Trump being investigated for Russian ties in 2016 was not even a grain of sand. Honestly, there should have been more investigations and more attacks. If this was true, that George Papadopoulos was the catalyst, I think that's justifiable. If the Steele dossier was the catalyst, then the conversation is a little bit different. But I'll have to do some research on that. I don't want to make any statements when I'm
fair enough. Now, meanwhile, look, as somebody who's a student, the whole bit, I'd love to get your take on the recent $220 million settlement between Columbia University and the Trump administration. First and foremost, I'd like to know where the money's going to go, right? And I know it's over a 3-year payout, but they made a $220 million settlement, which to me exposes institutional failures in handling abuse allegations. You agree that this payout represents real accountability? Or do you think that it's a financial band-aid to protect not just their prestigious reputation, but also the billions of dollars that they intended to get through government grants?
I would need to read the settlement, but the allegation is that they failed to protect their students against anti-Semitism?
Correct.
I think that there's probably some truth to that. Yeah.
By the way, it goes more than just anti-Semitism. It's about all of DEI in terms of which students are brought into the school. It's also about who the professors are, what the curriculum that they're teaching are, specifically to Middle Eastern studies.
It might overreach there. That seems like some executive overreach. Here's the thing. I've seen cases on campus of course, anti-Semitism or stuff like that. But the Trump administration is not prioritizing fighting anti-Semitism. I don't think that that is a priority on the Trump admin's list. I think that, in fact, Trump has dined with Nick Fuentes. Even if you want to say that's an accident. You can say that. But I feel like Trump has fed into some anti-Semitic conspiracy theories in the past. So I'm not sure the admin is totally focused on that. I think that they just want to flex their executive power. I think that when they're suing Columbia, attacking Harvard, when Trump is suing the Wall Street Journal, it's just to try to flex and see how much the executive branch can do. Should the president and the executive branch be able to change the faculty hired by Columbia, what's taught by Columbia in the courses? I don't think so. I don't think the government should have anything to do with that. In the same vein, I don't think the government should be able to, in a top-down way, have DEI policies enacted at institutions. But, I mean, here's the thing. When I first read about some allegations of anti-Semitism, this was under the Biden administration, so this had nothing to do with Trump. I mean, those are probably true. There's probably some things that are happening, but the Trump admin is using this to try to change what they're teaching. That's way too far. The president shouldn't be able to change what a university is teaching, in my opinion.
Or the curriculum in and of itself. I mean,
yeah,
I truly don't understand the point here. And while sure, there's anti-Semitism everywhere, right? And so, okay, you want to start with the schools. I get it, but I think the manner to which all of these acts by this administration against, whether it's Harvard, Columbia, any of these elite institutions. I'm with you on that. I think it goes too far. And I'm also going to turn around and make a pretty bold claim on behalf of Gen Z. They don't appreciate this shit.
No.
Right? Now, if you don't like the course as a student, don't take it. It's that simple, right?
Yep.
Just don't take it. In your math class, there is no anti-Semitism. No. Right? I mean, unless of course the teacher is let's just say, a card carrying Nazi, right? And if your last name is Cohen, you're going to get an F, even if you get the formulas right, or you get the answers right. You're not talking about math or, English or, whatever. These are specific Middle Eastern courses that are being taught. There are degrees in Middle Eastern studies. They don't want it to be taught by individuals who they think are corrupting the minds.
It reminds me of
poor Gen Zers.
It reminds me of when they were attacking critical race theory too, which is a legal framework that should be taught in advanced schools, where it's just a framework of looking at things, right? Rather than what they thought, which is like second graders learning that white people are intrinsically evil. So I am going to take the opinion that college campuses are actually where you should be having these conversations, where you should be having these controversial conversations. I'm not saying that we should have like actual Nazis on college campus or people like that, but college that's where you have these discussions and you disagree and you say something dumb in class because that's a safe environment where you can then be taught by a teacher like what the actual logic is there. I mean, I said a lot of dumb things when I rose my hand in college classes. So I just think that college should be a place where you can learn new things, say dumb things, have debates, and be wrong. And when the Trump admin tries to remove courses or in a top-down way change the curriculum, that stifles the type of debate that creates a really strong, critical next generation.
Yeah, I agree with that. By the way, I'm just curious where that $220 million settlement is going to go, because, if you're talking about anti-Semitism, the basis for this withholding of government grants to Columbia or to Harvard and so on, well, shouldn't then maybe the Jewish students who were unable to get to class because they were being blocked by these protesters, shouldn't there be some compensation to them? Shouldn't there be, maybe maybe a nice donation to the Chabad at the school, or maybe to the Hillel organization or something? I'm just not really sure. Great, you got a settlement.
That would make too much sense. Why don't we just use it?
What's the settlement for?
We could also just reallocate it to abuse minorities at Alligator Alcatraz. It would make too much sense to help students.
I mean, I totally get it. How about just like pay off a whole bunch of student debt? What about all of the racism that goes on? One of the things that, and I'm totally taken back from it, where in the South, they have made moves to restore names and to put back up statutes of individuals who were, let's just say, pro-slavery. All right. Robert E. Lee, as an example, right? Do you know how many schools in America had the name Robert E. Lee? How many Robert E. Lee high schools, junior high schools, lower schools all bore his name on it? Like 240. So imagine if you're a black student and you're attending and getting a degree from a person that didn't believe that you were even human enough to have rights. How about rights not to be abused, to be beaten, to be killed, to be hung, simply because they felt like it?
It's also just not patriotic. How can you say you're a patriot when you're waving the flag of a country that was like, I'm going to actually declare war on the United States. I'm going to try to take over the United States. It's the opposite of patriotic. And people can use the heritage argument, but the heritage of what? Like it's all thinly veiled racism, or it's a way to say that you think white people are superior without saying that. I mean, even in high school, when I had friends waving Confederate flags, sure, my 14-year-old, not like friends, but I went to high school in Indiana. So inevitably I would talk to people who are Trump supporters. When I saw like a 14-year-old waving a Confederate flag, I was like, this dude doesn't even understand what he's waving. He's going to grow up his entire life ignorant of what he's standing for right here. So I would always have these conversations and try to like talk to them about it. But yeah, it is thinly veiled racism. And I think I used to want to be charitable and say the MAGA movement or large portions of it, like let's say the center-right independent Republicans weren't on board with a lot of the racism or stuff. But I really do think after watching that Mehdi Hassan Jubilee, did you watch that at all? Any of the clips from Mehdi Hassan debating him?
No,
Oh,
I
it's
didn't.
insane. He debates all these far-right people. And like a lot of the Republican Party could be taken down a very dark path very easily. They already have been, but I think it could get a lot darker when it comes to racism and everything. And I think that Trump's claim to fame back in 2012 was like birtherism, right? And since then, I'm not sure it's gotten any better.
Yeah, I mean, I see it just as a method of trying to rewrite, a cultural narrative. But since we're talking about a cultural narrative, let me just say, did you obviously hear about the renaming of the Kennedy Center Opera House?
Yeah, to the Melania Trump.
Yeah, it'll be which I just find to be, an incredibly provocative move that this administration is taking to blend politics, culture, create a legacy. Let me ask you this question. Take that, add it to all the other things that we're seeing going on right now. What does this say about the current administration's approach to symbolism and historical memory?
They put a lot of emphasis on symbolism or branding or trying to make sure Trump is in history. There was that one tweet from Terry Moran, and remember it was about Stephen Miller. It says Stephen Miller is nourished by hatred. It's all a means to an end to hate more. But Trump's hatred is a means to his own glorification, basically. So all Trump cares about at the end of the day, mostly what Trump cares about is his own glorification. So I think you can use that framework and look at a lot of the actions this admin is taking and see that he's just trying to glorify himself. I mean, naming the Opera House after Melania Trump, that's self-glorification. They make jokes about putting him in Mount Rushmore, self-glorification. I genuinely think he's desperate to end the war between Russia and Ukraine. He has been, not because he actually cares about Europe or Eastern Europe. I think he wants to be known as the peace president. He wants self-glorification, and he wants to be able to end all wars, not because he cares about wars, but because he wants to be known as the guy who did it. And I think part of the reason why he wanted to take over Greenland at one point was because he wanted to be known as one of the few U.S. presidents who expanded our territory or was able to broker a deal to expand territory. So it's symbolism. A lot of it is symbolism, trying to make sure that he has a place in history. But in doing so, it could backfire. I mean, in 20 years, if it's named the Melania Trump Opera House, whatever it's supposed to be called, and the MAGA movement ended up fizzling into something very dangerous and terrible, I don't know, it could backfire.
Yeah, I agree with you. Look, at the end of the day, he wants to be on Mount Rushmore. He wants the Nobel Peace Prize. He wants them. In all fairness, like most people would say, yeah, listen, it's nice. It's nice to get. But because Obama got it, because other people, he wants the Nobel Peace Prize for his own ego, which of course is why, he wants to see Russia, Ukraine come to an end, why he wants to be the guy who brings back all the hostages. I mean, all of this was supposed to be done in 24 hours. And look, I'm not faulting. I applauded him and Witkoff and the administration when they returned the very first hostage, let alone 100 hostages. At the end of the day, I don't even want to imagine as a parent what it must feel like to have, your child or a loved one, be held hostage by an enemy combatant group. I can't even imagine. So I applaud him for that. And I don't really care if his entire motivation is predicated on having his face on Mount Rushmore or getting a Nobel Peace Prize. Just accomplish it. All right. And accomplish it quick. Because right now, as he says all the time, thousands of people are dying every single week, right? Let's try to ultimately do the right thing, and let's try to do it hopefully for the right reason. Sometimes it doesn't really matter, right? But as long as you accomplish, the ultimate task. But my God, we are right now in an environment that is just rife with misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, weaponized truth. And unfortunately, it's going to be your generation that's going to have to figure out how to fix this shit.
It's getting really bad, especially with how much AI is accelerating. I mean, I see reels in my Instagram feed where all the comments believe it. And I know that it's AI. And I'm like, you guys really believe this? This information is bad. The president of the United States, in a top-down way, is spreading the disinformation. For all the faults for Biden's presidency, whether it's his age or whatever you want to say, never once did he post an AI video of the former president being arrested. Like, Republicans' heads would explode if Biden would have randomly tweeted out. Like, imagine how Scott Jennings on CNN would react. Like, if Biden would have tweeted something like that out. But when Trump tweets it out, it's not even a blip.
I don't even like to hear Scott Jennings' name. I think he's such a fool. Adam Mockler, thank you so much for joining. I have to figure something out to do together, get up onto a stage. I'll come out to Chicago, you come to New York, whatever it might be. But we got to go into the areas that are red or at least purple. All right? Because I think it's extremely important.
It's important to have those conversations that people aren't having. People on our side for a while have been too finger waggy, shutting down conversation, kind of condescending. But you can talk to your fellow Americans without being condescending. And I think we should do that. So thank you for having me on. I hope the audience enjoys the cross-generation chat, and we'll do it again soon.
Anytime. Thanks, Adam.